Chapter 4. As soon as Michael read the final words of the note, he looked up. The office turned and shifted. The edges of the room became lower than its center. The desk seemed to stretch and curve. He stood up, pushed the chair away, and stepped toward the window. He never made it. Suddenly dizzy, Michael's knees buckled, and he landed face first on the floor. He reached out to catch himself, but his hands pushed through the floor as if it weren't even there. The rest of his body followed his hands into complete darkness. Almost instantly, like he had fallen through the floor into a room below, Michael was on his feet, alert and unharmed. He was in a large, ornate room that was the size of his high school gym, but much, much older. He was in the middle of a group of people who were pushing for a position to see something going on at the front. The men weren't wearing shirts and were deeply suntanned. The women wore robes of brightly colored cloth, and their extremely long hair was rolled into ropes and twisted down their backs. Without warning, a gong was struck. Michael grabbed his ears and watched every man and woman around him as they stopped talking, fell to their knees, and lowered their heads. Stunned, Michael just stood there, and suddenly he had a clear view of the room. Directly in front of him were 6 steps. On each side of the steps were statues of lions carved from dark marble. But there was nothing compared to the sight at the top of the steps. Standing alone in the center of a granite pedestal was a throne made of ivory and trimmed in gold. The back of the chair was rounded at the top and had an armrest on each side. 2 more lions, they were also made of gold, stood silent watch beside the throne. The gong sounded again, and a man near the throne walked quickly to a curtain and parted the cloth. Stepping through the open space was the most radiant human being Michael had ever seen. He wore a robe of brilliant turquoise. Rubies and gems of every sort were sewn into the hems and sleeves of the garment. Around his arms and neck were bands of solid gold. The crown on his head, also made of gold, was dusted with small diamonds. Michael, the only person still standing, stared open-mouthed at this awesome figure. He was a large man. Even in sandaled feet he appeared to be a foot taller than Michael. His thick, dark hair was shoulder-length, parted in the middle, and seemed to be held in place by the heavy crown. Circling to the front of his throne, he sat down and said simply, "Let us begin." Immediately the crowd leaped to its feet, and the argument around the throne began again. As Michael got closer, he could hear the angry voices of 2 women, growing louder. "He is mine," one screamed. "No, no," cried the other, "you are a thief." Michael made his way to the front as the crowd grew wider, taking sides with the women and shouting insults at them. Michael found it oddly similar to those afternoon talk shows where people fight out all of their personal problems, but somehow Michael felt this was much more real. "Silence," the man on the throne commanded, and a hush passed over the people. Michael moved to the edge of the steps, where he could clearly see the 2 women on the throne above them. No one seemed to notice him slipping through the crowd. He felt invisible. Seeing the woman clearly for the first time, he noticed that one of them held a newborn baby. Every eye in the room was looking toward the throne. Michael felt like he was the only one breathing. Then, with a movement of his hand, the man on the throne indicated the second woman, who was alone, and said softly, "Tell me your story." The woman bowed and said, "Your Majesty, this woman and I live in the same house. Not long ago my baby was born at home. 3 days later her baby was born. No one was with us. Last night, while we were all asleep, she rolled over on her baby and he died. Then, while I was asleep, she got up, took my son out of my bed, and put him in her own. Then she put her dead baby next to me." The crowd murmured as she continued, "In the morning, when I arose to feed my son, I saw that he was dead. But when I looked at him in the light, I knew it was not my son." "No," the other woman shouted, "he was your son. My child is alive." "The dead baby is yours," yelled the woman who told the story. "You were holding my child. My baby is alive." The women argued back and forth until the king raised his hand and silenced them again. Michael saw the king look into the eyes of each woman. In a measured tone, he commanded an attendant, "Bring me my sword." Michael watched without moving as the sword was brought from behind the curtain. It was nearly 5 feet long, shining silver with a golden handle. The king took it in his hand, stood up, and said, "Bring the baby to me. I will cut him in half. That way each of you can have a part of him." A guard approached the 2 women and seized the infant. He placed the baby on a stone table before the king, and the king raised the sword as if to strike. "Wait, please don't kill my son," screamed the woman standing alone. She fell to her knees. "Your Majesty, give him to her, but don't kill him." "Go ahead, cut him in half," the other woman snarled. "Then neither of us will have the baby." And the king put down his sword and said softly, Give the child to her," pointing to the woman who was on her knees weeping. "She is the real mother." As the woman's tears of despair turned into tears of joy, the baby was placed in her arms, and the crowd cheered. Michael yelled and clapped right along with them. When the king rose from his throne, the people knelt to the ground once more, leaving Michael standing alone. As the king walked toward the curtain, he paused, turned, and looked directly at Michael as if to say, "Are you coming?" Michael caught the look and quickly followed him up the steps. Passing through the curtains, he entered a smaller but more amazing room. Gold shields crossed with silver spears lined the walls. Pillows of linen and tanned skins were scattered in the corner near a low table covered with food of every kind. Light poured through the windows that were accented in ivory and gold. Michael came into the center of the room, but the two attendants guarding the room didn't notice him. The king finished his conversation with a man Michael heard him call Ahishner, and then he moved to recline on the pillows at the table. Still talking to Ahishar, the king added, "Please go now, and instruct all the attendants to leave the hall." Ahishar was shocked. "But, your majesty, it's not safe for you to—" "I prefer to be alone," the king interrupted. "Thank you for your concern, but it is unnecessary at this time." Ahishar bowed and left, motioning the attendants out after him. Finally alone, Michael and the king stared curiously at each other. And the king spoke first. "Do you know where you are?" he asked with a smile. "Yes, sir," Michael answered slowly. "Do you know who I am?" "Yes, sir, I do. You are King Solomon, sir. I recognize the story. I remember what happened out there." Michael took a breath. "What I'm trying to say is that I remember the story from when I was little." Solomon smiled. "No matter," he said. "Are you hungry?" "Yes, sir," Michael replied. "Then please join me." Solomon pointed to a big pillow, and Michael quickly sat down. "You see before you the finest food available anywhere in the world. The food and anything else you might need is yours for the asking." "Thanks," Michael answered, reaching for some fruit. "By the way, my name is Michael Holder." "Two names," Solomon noted, "and still you speak my language well. Have you been schooled in Hebrew, or is your tongue a surprise to you?" Michael, a bit confused, reached up and touched his tongue. "Oh, you mean my language. I was amazed that I could understand every word being spoken when I got here, and I'm even more amazed that I can speak to you now. Yeah, I made A's and B's in Spanish, but speaking fluently in an ancient language, that's unbelievable." Solomon chuckled. "It's not so ancient to me, my friend, but I do understand your astonishment. Wherever you travel on this unusual journey, you will find that your mouth and ears have been granted a special ability to communicate and comprehend, so that you may be able to understand the gift with which you are being entrusted." "A gift?" Michael asked. "Yes, the scrolls," Solomon answered. "I prepared this one for you only this morning." He gently placed his hand on a thin piece of leather that had been tightly wound around a small wooden rod. "It is the message that was placed in my heart for you. This is merely a part of what you must be ingrained in your life before you will be able to pass the gift to others." "Hang on, how am I supposed to pass this gift to anyone?" Michael shook his head. The king grinned as he reached for a bunch of grapes. Plucking one from its stem, he placed it in his mouth and said thoughtfully, "That is something you may not know for yet some time. Then again, the answer could be revealed to you tomorrow. Jehovah will move mountains to create the opportunity. It is up to you to be ready to move yourself." Michael leaned toward the king. "I think I get it. You mean I have to be ready for what's coming." Solomon nodded slowly. "Then how do I prepare for something when I don't know what it is or when it will happen?" "Seek wisdom," the king said simply. Michael had to stop himself from rolling his eyes. "Okay, I know I'm not stupid, but I'm not catching on here. How do I seek wisdom?" "The answer I have for you will not help your frustrations with me," the king replied, and then paused. "My answer is to seek wisdom." Michael couldn't believe what he was hearing. Even the wisest king in all of history talks in circles just like every other adult, he thought. As if the king had heard Michael's thoughts, he spoke. "Michael, you have a condition common to most people. You hear, but you do not listen. Seek wisdom. Seek wisdom. Wisdom wants to be gathered. She cannot be bought or sold. She is a gift for those who don't give up, and only those who truly look will find her. The lazy man, the stupid man, never even looks. Wisdom is available to many, but found by few. Seek wisdom, find her, and you will find success and contentment." "Well," Michael said, "I certainly don't have success or happiness in my life right now." "That is all in the past," Solomon noted. Even the present is constantly becoming the past. Now, and now, and now. He snapped his fingers as he talked. The past will never change, but you can change the future by changing your actions today. It is really very simple. We are always changing. We might as well guide the direction in which we change. How do I guide my direction? Michael asked. Solomon rose to his feet and began to walk around the room. Clasping his hands behind his back, he said, Your parents, are they concerned about the types of friends you choose? Michael did roll his eyes this time. Yes. Why do your friends concern them? Solomon asked. Well, Michael began, they say if I hang around with the people who do bad stuff, I'll do bad stuff too. But that's not true. I make my own decisions. So, your friends don't influence the direction of your life? Michael continued. No, Michael answered quickly, but remembering the situation he had left at home, he added, Well, okay, maybe a little. Exactly, the king said with excitement. The answer, of course, is that we are always influenced by those with whom we associate. If a man keeps company with those who curse and complain, he will soon find curses and complaints flowing like a river from his own mouth. If he spends his days with the lazy, those seeking handouts, he will soon find his finances in disarray. Many of our sorrows can be traced to relationships with the wrong people. Michael jumped to his feet and wiped his hands on his jeans. So this is an important step in seeking wisdom? Possibly the most important step, Solomon responded. Guard your associations carefully, Michael. Anytime you tolerate the average in your friends, you become more comfortable with the average in your own life. If laziness isn't an irritation to you, it is a sign that you have accepted it as a way of life. You saw Ahishar as you entered, did you not? Michael nodded. I have many men with whom I keep counsel. If it is important for a king to be careful in his choice of friends. Would it not also be important for you? Michael walked over to one of those gold shields on the wall and ran his finger across the textured surface. You are the wisest man in the world, he said, and obviously the richest. So why do you need the advice of other men? Solomon smiled patiently. Only a fool refuses the counsel of wise men. There is safety in counsel. Solomon moved to the table and picked up the scroll. Placing it into the fold of his robe, he motioned to Michael, Follow me. As Solomon exited the interior room, he held the curtain open for Michael to pass. Michael stepped under Solomon's arm and said, I should be holding the curtain for you. After all, you are the king. Solomon laughed. Thank you, but I appreciate the opportunity to serve you. When a king begins to act like a king, it is not long before someone else is king. Serving is a way we can place value on each other. A wise man is a server. As they walked into the great hall, Michael pointed to the throne. May I touch it? Certainly, Solomon replied. Sit on it if you wish. It is only a chair. Michael touched it carefully and eased himself onto the throne. With a grin, he said, I feel very small sitting here. As do I, Solomon chuckled, then added seriously, The responsibility that comes with leadership is humbling. When I sit there, I am grateful for the lessons of my father. He has been dead now for many years, but his lessons still guide me. Michael remembered his own father in the hospital. What lessons has he tried to teach me? I hear him, but do I listen? Solomon interrupted his thoughts. It is time for us to part, my friend, he said, handing him the scroll. I hope that our time together will bring more understanding to your life's journey. I can do nothing to help your struggles and would not if I were able. Battle the challenges of your present, and you will unlock the prizes of your future. Thank you, Your Majesty, Michael answered. Of course, Solomon replied. He smiled and bowed slightly. It has been an honor to assist you. Farewell. Michael watched King Solomon until he disappeared through a doorway, flanked by guards at the opposite end of the room. Slowly he slid back onto the throne and smoothed the king's words onto his lap.